Welcome everyone to the TBD Pod. Today we have Nick DiCosola.
There you go.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
With St. Pete Box. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us. I mean, everybody at St. Pete Box and like all my friends watch your podcast.
Well, welcome. They're all going to watch you now.
Yeah.
No
Probably
pressure.
not. This will be the one they don't watch.
Yeah, right. The one time you come on. No, we'll have you back, of course. So St. Pete Box, we were talking a little bit before we went live. Explain to people exactly what it is.
So St. Pete Box is a welding and fabrication company that modifies shipping containers. We sell shipping containers. We rent shipping containers for different uses, for commercial use, for residential. We build ADUs. We build homes, complete homes. We do a bit of everything, but our focus is containers, shipping containers.
It's really interesting. I feel like a few years ago, there was a huge emphasis on tiny homes. You remember that? Like tiny homes were all the rage. They were built on little trailers or wood frame with, the sliding glass door in the front. This is a real shipping container, correct? Like that was used on a boat. On a boat,
yeah. And that's the use of them. I think I can start to get in a conversation with you about why this works. This works because of China's ability to build these things so cheaply, quickly, and for a purpose. They're an ISO certified purpose. So they're supposed to last a certain amount of years. They all are the same dimension, similar weights, depending on the manufacturer.
Right, there's a standard.
Yeah, and they're made out of something called Core-10 steel. Majority of it is made out of Core-10 steel, and Core-10 steel is a weathering alloy, so they don't rust. They like patina. And all those things said, if you use them to build with, as opposed to telling people, oh, I'm going to live in a shipping container, that's not really what we do. We kind of try to tell people, look, we're building homes, we're building an ADU, we're building a shop, and we're using the shipping container as a material.
Right.
And the reason that works better is because then you don't have this conversation that it's like a DIY situation. Because for us, it's not. I mean, we're a real company. Mm-hmm. I've been doing this a long time. And we try to make things for people that are going to last a long time and possibly longer than normal houses.
And how long have you been doing this for?
So I started in Nevada. I started in Henderson. I want to say 2012, 2013.
Wow, over 10 years.
Yeah. And what we were doing out there, if we go way back, I went to Berklee College of Music, and I was in the music business for like the first half of my life. And I had an opportunity to work for a friend of mine, Matt Bach, who owned a plastic pyrolysis plant. And plastic pyrolysis, where you take like high density polyethylene or other types of plastic and you convert it down into crude, and then you refine that crude. And I went into that business not knowing how to weld. And so he said, look, you can work for me. I'll teach you to weld. I won't, pay you that well to start. It'll be like an intern. And I did that. And the way that the containers came about was we were using mostly agricultural plastic from California, and it was coming in shipping containers. And so those shipping containers would pile up on the yard. And a friend of mine, Dean, said, why don't we start to turn these into things? Like I see people building these into shops and offices and homes.
So when you would get a delivery of these things in a shipping container, the shipping container, what, like you said earlier, is made so cheap and so in such a standard way that it's almost like a throwaway thing for shipping?
Especially at that time.
At that time.
We're talking, 2012, 2013. People were building stuff out of shipping containers, but it was like an afterthought.
Right.
And now they're a commodity, But at that time, it was like, we're just going to send it. And if we get the container back, we get it back. If not, it'll stay there.
Oh.
They were maybe couple $1,000 for a used container or cargo worthy container. Whereas now,
cheap, yeah,
there's a premium. So in saying all that, that's how it started. And we just happened to get lucky where we were building these things. And for example, we built one that was like a little shop for EDC, for Electric Daisy Carnival or whatever that, the EDM concert is out there. And that got popularized because they sprayed it with graffiti and all this stuff, and so it was on Instagram, and that was something we did. We kept like accidentally falling into stuff.
Yeah.
And then we did one where it was a showcase for CES, Consumer Electronics Show, and all they did was like borrow the container from us and put their stuff in it, so that it was like a, I don't know, like
a storage unit almost.
Well, not even a storage unit. I mean, it was something they used in the show in CES, but it was an afterthought to us. But for them, they were like, "Oh, this will draw people as an attraction to our booth." They use it as a booth.
Yeah,
that's what it was. And then the final thing that we did when we were like, "Okay, we're gonna get out of this business. It's not ready for us yet. We didn't even really know what we were doing." I designed this container and made it pretty fantastic with like a lot of glass. It was all custom. I shaved the opening doors, like the barn doors. I shaved them down so they were smooth and had glass inserts.
Oh, wow.
And this guy came to us, and his name is Tony Lopez, and he now owns a company called Alternative Living Spaces, which is actually one of the largest shipping container and tiny home builders in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And we sold him his first container. Well, he put that container on YouTube, and it blew up like millions of views because he actually made it into a really beautiful like domicile / ADU thing in a backyard. And that's how we started to get like a little bit popular in the industry.
Yeah. It almost sounds like the customers themselves came out with these ideas that maybe you guys didn't even foresee. Like they had an idea of how to use one, and you guys are like, "Oh, that's interesting. I guess we can do that too."
Most of the time, that's how it's worked. We've built things for people that I can't even show you because we had to sign NDAs. Like we built a box for a gentleman that had an expensive car collection, and he wanted to be able to put a particular car outside and like look at it during winter. So it had like heat in it. It was like a Matchbox box, right?
Oh my
completely
God,
glass. That you won't find any pictures of, unfortunately, because we weren't allowed. But that wasn't something we ever thought about building. He called us and said, "Hey, this is what I want. Can you do it?"
I guess cars do fit in there, right? Isn't that how they ship cars across the ocean?
It's not generally the main way. They'll use a roll-on, roll-off system.
And maybe you couldn't fit like a Hummer or whatever.
They'll fit 4 in there. Like they'll bleed them of all their fluids and put them upside down, chain them to the ceiling.
Really?
And then they can fit 4 in a 40.
Oh, I guess
sometimes more.
So these are all a standard size, correct? They all are the same size. What are the dimensions? Like how big are these things?
The most popular dimensions are 40 foot and 20 foot in length.
Okay, that's pretty big. Damn.
Yeah.
40, and then how wide?
And then they're 8 feet wide roughly, and in terms of height, they're 8'6" and 9'6". So a standard cube, which is called sometimes a DC or GP, just a dry cube or general purpose cube, is 8'6", and that's from the bottom of the corner caster to the top of the corner casting.
Wow.
And then you see how it's got like the yellow and black.
Right.
Those are all 9'6", and that's kind of how you can tell that they're taller. So for building, for like a domicile or for like someone to live in, I always suggest using those containers because it feels more homey, right? An 8'6" container, once you put the drywall and the studs and all that stuff in there, it starts to feel a little tight.
So along the way where it sounds like there's not necessarily one type of customer, right? Some guy wants to put a car in it. Some company wants to use it for storage or a booth, like you mentioned, or EDC. Like, at what point did you kind of scale this to a business where you said, "Hey," like, what's the time frame, I guess I should say, between that first one and then
it's been
EDC
it's been a long road. I can tell you this. My business partner, Dean, I pushed back on him a lot for a long time because I didn't buy into the whole idea of containers. I mean, you're seeing containers there. That was a part of a house that was on the Ottawa River in
See, I didn't even think
Canada.
about this. You could remove the 2 walls and put 2 together.
That's the majority of the time what we do for homes because you need these things to be bigger. You know what I mean? They're really not a great size to build in. So you have to be inventive about how you cut them up and position them so that it feels like a home.
And then they're welded together?
Yeah, they're welded together. These are all engineered and architectural drawings for for these things to be permitted, you know?
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because it's kind of a novel thing for local government, right? So in terms of like building codes, right? How do these comply with building codes here locally in Florida?
So when we're building a home for somebody, we're not building the container home. We're building them a home. We're just using containers as a material in the process. Now, there are steps above that and below that. So above that could be like a big commercial project, right? And we're using multiple, maybe 10s or 20s containers in terms of number of units used. And then we have less than that, which would be like an ADU. So if we're building a home, it goes exactly through the process of building a home. You know, you get your land survey, you get your architectural drawings, your engineering stamp, you submit it, and then it gets passed, and we start building a house on a traditional foundation, whatever it may be. If we're talking about ADUs, site offices, an office for somebody behind their house, then we start talking about, well, maybe we can get this so that it's an actual product that has a notice of approval from the state of Florida. So you can just purchase it from us as a product and put it back there. And the only permitting you would need would be to hook up power, water, and whatever it's going to be tied to.
And when you first came to, I guess, was St. Pete the first residential project you did?
No. So after Nevada, took a break from that scene for a while, and my father immigrated from Italy through Canada into the United States. So I have a lot of family in Canada. And I always knew that their building and development stuff was always very forward thinking.
Yes.
There's
yeah.
there's not a lot of people in Canada, but where the people are is Toronto,
Right.
you know,
The
Montreal.
urban
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 big cities that house everyone really in Canada. And Toronto being that and seeing there are container builds up there. There's a container house. There's a container this. There's a container that.
Interesting, yeah.
So we were like, okay, let's try this there. And it worked. But I will say the thing that pushed us along the most, because we got stagnant. I mean, this is, even though people have been doing this for 10 or 15 years, it's still very new to everyone.
Right.
And people don't know what to use it for. They know they want to use it, but they don't know like the best case scenario for using containers. And one of the best places to use containers is a construction site. And that's why you see so many of them. And so we actually got the contract to build all the container offices for Verde Alliance. And Verde Alliance is, I think they're the largest construction company in Canada. And we knew one of the owners. And I think, man, I can't even tell you how many I built, because I built like 2 or 3 a week for them for a long time.
Wow.
But building those got us to realize if we can build these cheaply enough and convince people that they could use these on their own property for like what they call in Canada a bunkie, which would be like a cabin. If we can convince people to use these things, we can sell a lot of them. So them seeing them all over job sites, like in downtown Toronto, they would stack the containers 4 or 5 stories high on top of things to have their foreman or their engineer,
offices.
as an office. And that kind of solidified people seeing them a lot, you know, seeing them out used for something. And then they're like, man, that'd be cool if that was a cabin or that was a bunkie, they call it, way out on a lake or something. So then we started building those. We built 2 or 3 of those that people used. And our experience in this industry has been, you get a lot more exposure to a customer base when you build it and then just put it somewhere and let them see it. Because a lot of these businesses that you see online, they'll do the rendering thing, or they'll do CAD files or like digital stuff. And that doesn't generally work so much when people want to know, can these guys actually do it? Can these guys build, you know, what they say they're going to build?
Well, the idea of it in itself is kind of strange, right? It's very unique and it's atypical of how construction's been done in the last 100 years. So when you hear, oh, you're going to build a bunkie? What is it called?
Bunkie.
A bunkie or
It's
a
like
cabin or an ADU or whatever it is out of a shipping container. that makes sense that a customer would be like, well, let me exactly see how this plays out. It kind of makes sense that people have that reaction.
Also, that it's been a DIY industry for a long time. I mean, if
Right.
you go on YouTube, you'll find 100 different videos of people DIYing these things, and that's not what we're doing. We're not DIYing these builds. We're getting them architecturally drawn and engineered, and then we're putting them on people's property for them to live in.
Right. And moving from kind of those rural areas, cabins, construction sites in Canada and around the country too, moving here locally to St. Pete, what did the permitting department or local government say when you first came to them, like that first drawing? Were they like, ooh, let me figure this out?
So they've said on their websites, and I don't know if they've said it really publicly, but they've put it on their website that, St. Pete is for it. Tampa is for it. It's still tricky, it's still tricky. I wish I could say to somebody that, yeah, you can just put one behind your house, but you have to have the correct setbacks. You have to have the ability to even fit something back there. And more importantly, you have to pay for architectural drawings and engineering, which is why if we're going to do ADUs for people, that's why we're trying to lick all those problems ourselves without, I really, like I told you before when we had spoken on the phone, I hate saying I don't know to a customer. And so we're removing as much of that as possible, but it's still a learning curve. And I will say this, I'm born and raised in St. Pete. I thought this would be the easiest place to run this business, and it's been the most difficult. And the reason for that is because we deal with hurricanes, And so I don't think people understand, like when they see a product like Boxable, for example, if you're familiar with Boxable, a lot of people are trying to do what containers are doing, but not use containers. And the problem with that is Florida has really extreme building codes because we get hurricanes all the time. So we build these to that code using impact glass, making sure we're using H-frames anytime we're taking out corrugation.
I would assume they're tied down in some way too.
They're tied down. They can oftentimes be welded to a steel decking or screw piles with caps on top. I mean,
these things are solid.
They're. I will tell you this, Garrett. They're going to be the only things left if a real hurricane hits.
That was my next question, is how do these stack up to some of the traditional ways of building ADUs or smaller structures or even commercial spaces in terms of like storms in Florida? Sounds like they're stronger.
I mean, I have a buddy, Channing McHorst, and he owns a company in Canada. He's the container guy. If you watch the YouTube videos, he's actually building one of the cannons to shoot at these things because there are certain things. He owns a company called Container Modification World. So he makes a lot of accessories for containers, and those have to pass certain, codes and stuff.
Right.
And so we're going to start shooting these things with like 2x4s, like you do windows and doors.
That's what they do to test these impact rated windows.
I think he mentioned that a 20 or a 40-foot container, just not strapped down to the ground or anything, can withstand 145 mile an hour sustained winds to the point where it won't flip over. And I think we're right there at the edge, maybe at like 150 it'll flip, but they're very robust.
Wow.
They're stout. You can drop stuff on them. They get dropped all the time.
Right.
They fall off ships and float. I mean, they're a really good thing to build with. And I think taking advantage, dealing with China, I deal with China a lot. Dealing with China can be difficult, but the one thing they got right, I feel like, for a robust structure, something that they build really, really well, are shipping containers because they have to, I
mean, they're probably the largest shipping country on the entire planet, right? I mean, they're shipping goods all over the entire globe.
We can't build these things here domestically, and I've looked. Trust me, I have tried to figure out maybe
I'm
we
sure
can
if you could make a
manufacture.
choice, you'd rather buy here, but maybe the manufacturing components just don't exist. Or if they do, they're 5 times as expensive.
Yeah, it's part of the arbitrage process that comes with dealing with China. Like these things are artificially priced. They're not real. You know what I mean? Like I can sell to a customer on the low end, 20-foot standard, one trip container for $3,250, $3,500, and that's good. I'm the cheapest in like the Southeast, but even in saying that, that's not a real price. If we had to build these things, they'd be in the probably $7,000 to $10,000, just steel and labor.
Right. Yeah. So the fact that you can get them so cheap is a huge advantage from China.
And that is the advantage, because once you start talking about building something that is a steel structure, it's using an alloy, you can shoot stuff at it at 150 miles an hour. It's not going to penetrate it. Nothing's going to fly off of it. If there's a hurt, I mean, they're
solid.
I want to build my house out of one.
Me too, man. I want to talk too about back to what you said, where local government wants architectural and engineering drawings done. Isn't that counterintuitive to the standard structure of a shipping container? Like, I would imagine in the future, I hope you could go to a local government and say, hey, I want a shipping container as an ADU. And there's already a defined process where you don't have to do an architectural drawing because it's a standard shipping container.
So we're building a 20-foot high cube ADU right now. And we're building it for a couple different reasons. Like I said, anybody that comes to us, they're like, I want to see something finished. Well, the problem with that is when we build them, we give them to the customer, and the customer either lives in them or rents them, or, they're not really able to be seen. And to build something and just have it there complete it takes a little bit of money. So it's taken us a little while to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. So we're in the process of doing that.
So you're going to have a model.
We're going to have a model. And that model will help with a couple different things. Firstly, and foremost, it's for people to see, hey, these guys actually can build it. Mm-hmm. They can actually finish it, and it's actually nice when they finish it, right? That's one. Two is the whole process has been being documented, and then we're kind of doing it the wrong way, to be honest. But we're building the engineering and architectural plans off of what we're building. And then we're going to submit that to the DBPR in the state of Florida to see if we can get, now, I don't want to say it's a manufactured home. I don't want to say it's pre-manufactured or mobile home. It's literally going to be a shipping container home or ADU that you can purchase from us that is already a Florida approved product. And
that would be huge, right? Yeah. A defined separate lane where these things can have a more understandable compliance, right? Because they're really not a modular home. Like, a modular home is frame and fiberglass. It's way less strong than a shipping container. And to box those two things into the same category, it just doesn't make sense.
And I know mobile homes. My family owned a mobile home park since, I want to say, the early 60s. In St. Pete, we owned Isle of Palms Mobile Home Park.
Oh, okay.
And I grew up working on mobile homes. And
those are the first, when a hurricane comes, that's the big fear of local government. Those places get wiped out.
Well, you not only don't want to be in a mobile home when there's a storm, but you don't want to be around mobile homes when there's a storm, because that stuff comes off and flies everywhere. So yeah, they're not that. They're like little tanks that you can buy.
Yeah.
It's almost like an above ground tornado shelter. You know what I mean? If you build it with impact glass, impact doors, and it's tied down correctly, and you haven't attached anything to it that's going to fly off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd rather be in that.
Yeah, me too. But it makes sense. Like, imagine if, a new mobile home park came about that was shipping containers, how much more resilient that would be.
Well, that's kind of what we wanted to do. And we've had customers come to us from down in like the Sarasota area, places that were affected by the hurricanes most recently, where they're like into the process now of like, okay, let's redevelop multifamily, multi-home design groupings of like subdivisions, but what can we build them out of that is maybe a tad more affordable and also more resilient, that they're going to be here for a while.
It makes complete sense. Yeah. Yeah. Do you plan on getting local government leaders from St. Pete and Tampa over when you create the model and say, hey, look,
I already have. So I've been friends with Pete Boland from St. Pete for a while, and he's running for councilman, I think for Shore Acres, which
Yeah.
is, that's, he knows
They
what's
need some
going to,
containers over
exactly.
there. The problem is the flooding, which you're not going to get away from. That's just an elevation thing. But I wonder if you could build these up, right?
We can stilt them.
You can stilt them and then have either storage or parking underneath.
And you got to remember, first and foremost, I'm a welder and fabricator. And so anything that we can use steel, for example, in stilting these things, we'd like to, because again, it's going to be there for a long time. It's going to be resilient. It's not going to fall down,
Yeah. Why do we have to always do things the way they've always been done, right? I think with some new technologies and 3D printing has been a conversation about housing. To me, this is a viable solution. I don't think it's the entire solution for affordable housing or storm resiliency, but it is absolutely, from what you describe, a piece of the puzzle, especially like with mobile homes. Like imagine in Florida if 3 or 4 out of every 10 new mobile homes or manufactured homes was a shipping container. Like how much more resilient these places would be. How much more safe would people be?
If I still had grandparents and they were retiring to Florida and they were going to tell me they wanted to be in a mobile home and I saw what was happening with these hurricanes and stuff, I wouldn't want them in one. I'd want them in a container home.
Hell no, but those people go to mobile homes because of affordability.
Exactly. So I think personally, look, we've always tried to be really affordable, and maybe like to our own disadvantage at sometimes, but I want to be affordable because I want people to use this. We didn't get into this business to make a bunch of money off of one container. We really want to change the way people think about building, firstly, and then secondly, building container homes or container projects, using them for things. And so using this artificial pricing from China against them almost,
Right.
Because they're giving us this really great steel and really great manufacturing product for very, very cheaply. So we're using that. If we could get the prices down a little bit, then we could build these things for less than what people are putting mobile homes in for.
Let's talk about price. Obviously it's a variation depending on what the customer wants, but what is someone looking at to do, I guess, a basic ADU?
I can tell you what we're trying to price.
Okay.
So that 20-foot high cube studio setup. So there's a lofted bed in it that's actually on
do we have pictures?
No, none of that one yet.
Is there something similar that we could pull up?
If you were to look for...
But this is a different company, correct?
So, yeah, I can touch on that in a second if you'd like me to.
Well, is this a competitor or
no,
do you
this
work
is
with
us.
them?
This is us.
Okay,
so
this is you guys.
This will be our customer-facing brand.
Got it.
The reason for that is St. Pete Box just came out because I wanted something that said St. Pete in it, being from St. Pete.
Right.
And box is easy, right? To be honest, when we talked about it before, I didn't think it'd be available, but it was. So that's why I got it.
That's like the name of this show. I couldn't believe Tampa Bay Developer was available.
I know. So you got to grab it.
I was like, I guess I'll take that.
Exactly. So when I did that, I really wasn't thinking about it being a brand for consumers. And the reason this gets a little difficult is because we sell containers. So if you just need to buy a shipping container, we can sell you one. We also rent shipping containers. So if you need to rent one for a job site, and we modify containers for those specific uses as well. So if you're a construction company and you need a roll-up door and a man door and a couple windows, we do that. That's more St. Pete Box. But Lumara Containers, which is a company that as soon as we met each other, we knew it was going to work, started building these container homes together. And this being more of a brand, I think you got to think of it like these guys are really good at customer interaction, customer acquisition, getting the name out there, but also building some pretty, as you see, really fantastic stuff.
Super
and so we're the manufacturer that builds these containers for them.
Very, very cool. So any of these with the right setup on a property have already, like, these are already in places around the state, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, Zach, exactly where the other builds were, but they're up around the Gainesville area or no? Yeah. So we have a couple things. I don't know if we'll be able to show them again because there's people's houses, but
right.
We have stuff coming though that people are going to see. And here's the thing, like, I'm not where I want to be, so there are jobs that we're working on and stuff that we're doing. That was Danny Duncan's container. But there's stuff we're working on right now that maybe in the next couple of weeks we'll have more pictures of.
Got it.
And that more like development side.
Yeah, send them
we'll
over.
be able to
We'll share
show.
them. I just think it's fascinating to see a finished product. Go back, David, to the Lumara website. I just want to read off a couple of those points.
I wanted to touch on that price though, like you said, because
Yeah,
ultimately
exactly.
I think an ADU so this is barring this pricing and this size, because that's a 320 square foot. So that's a 40-foot container. Barring that, a 20-foot high cube that's like completely plug and play, I really want to get that price to around $50,000 or $60,000. And the reason I say that is because to build a garage underneath and then like mother-in-law suite upstairs ADU in St. Pete, I think it starts around $200,000 to $240,000. And I know this because I was working with some of those companies in another business that I was working in, and that's what their pricing is. But the difference is, I don't care what any of them tell you. Oh yeah, it'll be 3 months. It'll be 4 months. It's 18 months. I mean, it's easily over a year.
The manufacturing process?
For a conventional ADU to be built.
Right.
For masonry, like block bottom, stick construction up top.
Right.
That's just how it is.
Yeah.
The permit process, the ability to get all the trades there on time. If it rains, if it it's too hot one day, all that stuff.
All the materials.
We manufacture in a controlled environment, and we try to manufacture as much as possible in that environment. And that's how we can offer these things more inexpensively and quicker.
So you've got Lumara Solo, 320 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, including permitting, delivery, and the setup on site, $45,000.
And that's going to be a really basic container though. That's not going to have a lot of high-end finishes.
Right.
It doesn't have appliances. So when I'm talking that $60,000 or $50,000 for a 20, I'm saying literally we drop that thing off. You get a permit to connect electric to it. You get a permit to connect plumbing, and you tie it down. It's good to go. You live in it. That'd be amazing. That's it.
That's a fraction of what a traditional ADU would cost.
A lot of people that are calling us too right now, believe it or not, are, it's a homeowner that's in their 60s, 70s. They're like retiring, and they want to move out of the main house, and they want to live behind the house and give the main house to their kids who are going to start to have a family, like a young professional couple. We've got like 4 or 5 different customers talking to us about that right now.
Is there a bank that will finance these as you could with a traditional ADU?
Yeah. So if we're doing it as a standard engineered architectural drawing permitted, it's new construction.
Right.
So it's not, there is nothing for them to say, oh, we won't approve financing for container house, because it's not a container house.
Right.
It's a house.
Right.
And that's where I just keep
done
going
with
back
maybe
to
non-traditional building material.
Exactly. And that's the main thing to think about for these. Like, we're using the containers as a building material, but it's not, we're not just cutting a hole in the side of a container and throwing a light in there. And it's like, okay, now you live there. You know what I mean? That's not what we're doing. We really do build homes.
That's probably a challenging point in your business that I'm sure you've been working on for the last few years and will continue to develop, is like the kind of cultural mindset surrounding that, where people probably currently don't see it as just a different building material. They hear container. You know what I mean? They hear that word and they think of a shipping container, but you're right. It's really not that at all. It's a new construction structure made out of steel, which is probably stronger than a traditional, concrete and wood frame truss ADU.
Absolutely.
So it's the difference in material, stronger material.
I'll say this, Garrett, it's not people that we're having to convince. It's the bureaucrats and the people that work at the city, and that it's, the joke is process for the sake of process, right? So once you get into that little like whirlwind of maybe there's 4 people that work at the city for this particular city, and 2 of them love it and 2 of them hate it. Who do you talk to that day, right? So we need to educate the people that are making and making the rules and also accepting the rule change. Those people need to be educated.
And there's a lot of different, there's the building code, right? There's the local political will that gets behind things like this. But then you also have the public safety component. You know, fire marshal hears about this. Well, now he has a bunch of questions, right? Like there's all these little things to work through. And I think whenever there's any sort of novel concept, whatever it is, local government, they all shy away from it because they want to do things the same exact way because it's easy for them. As soon as you add in a different type of building, structural material, whatever that may be, 3D printed houses, you know, storage containers, they look at that and they go, well, now we have questions. And what does it mean for storm impact? What does it mean if one of these things catches on fire? They're probably fireproof, right? But all those questions, I'm sure they don't necessarily care to work through. I don't know how you bridge that gap.
You pay lawyers and you...
I'm sure you've been working on that, though, right? That's probably been a big focus of this whole thing is like getting, like you said, Canada's maybe more progressive in the way that they're forward thinking with these different...
Not just Canada, the West Coast of the United States is more forward thinking about these. I mean, you go out there 10 years ago and there were coffee shops and clothing stores in San Francisco that were made out of containers. There's all kinds of containers out there. So,
and it's trickling over here too. You have Sparkman Wharf, which people love. That's a proven concept for a commercial space. It's a destination. You've got all these little restaurants. Like I think it's trickling over here. You guys are a huge part of that. Obviously, government works a little slow.
We've kind of sneakily backdoored some stuff by being really, really like supportive of municipalities. And like you said, fire, like we sold to Madeira Beach Fire Department for cost. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to get in good with all these places. Hillsborough County Public Works called us for stuff. I still have to actually get back with them, but we're going to build it for them at cost. And it's because I want them to have the experience of working with us, see that we build a really great product, but then also know we're here, we're trying to implement change because, I mean, knock on wood, like when something happens here, I want to make sure that the infrastructure and the things that need to stay here are still here. So if we could build stuff out of containers for those purposes, let's do that, you know?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I think this conversation occurred with any new building material. Maybe, I don't know how long ago it was, call it 80 years ago, maybe when drywall first came out, you know, before it was the wood frame and the spackling and the mortar over it to create that strong interior wall. Then drywall came out. And I bet you drywall had fire concerns and safety concerns with drywall dust, just like there is today. But I'm sure a lot of questions come up anytime there's a new building material. So putting the new building material in the firehouse, putting it in, you know, letting local government come check it out, doing different projects with different commercial developers and ADUs, and like it'll all probably take time to trickle out. I think it's just so novel that people can't imagine it until they touch it and they feel it. Like you said, these people want that model. I'm sure that model, when you complete it, will have a dramatic impact on...
It always does. I mean, every time we've built a model, we can't hold on to it for more than 6 months because people want to buy that one. You
got to hold on to the next one.
But I will say this, Garrett, I don't think it's the end all. This is a transitional product, and it's a transitional product into modular building firstly, but building with more robust products. Like we need to change that thinking of using cinder block masonry construction in a place where, you know, you get enough water, it could push the wall over and that's a concrete structure, right? So a lot of the people that we work with are people that are having the conversation. How do we build more quickly, more efficiently, cheaply, but stronger, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. A lot of people don't understand that those new construction homes in flood zones, a lot of them, those are built with breakaway walls. Like those walls are not supposed to withstand storm surge. They're actually supposed to break away so water can flow through the downstairs of your home.
And you know, like any industry, you look to the military to see what's going to be in the future. And the military jumped on shipping containers a long time ago. So anybody that was, you know, posted overseas has experience in shipping container offices. Actually, a lot of the guys that I talk to that want this stuff remember, you know, they're like, I was in a really bad shipping container, you know, in Iraq or wherever. But in saying that, the military was looking at building stuff that was easily, what's the word? I want to use the correct word, deployable and redeployable. So that was one of the things that they had put out there, and containers actually functioned that way. Then they started to look at like those flat packed houses from China.
Right.
And a buddy of mine actually in Canada bought like 20 of them, and he can't even get them out of the package. Like they're built so poorly that they're twisted and they don't open correctly. And so again, using what we can from China that is built really well, robust, and it actually adheres to a code, like an ISO code. That's an advantage. But like I said, I think it's transitional. And what I mean by that is I work with a guy named Jason Halter, who is a pretty famous architect in Canada. I think he actually teaches at University of Toronto now. But he turned me on to stuff that were products that were like corner casters from a shipping container, and beams, would plug into them and connect. And it was built originally for like medical and government and military use, and then they ended up using it for data centers. And the reason was because they could build a small version first, and then as the data center grew, they could add to it modularly. But you can do the same thing with containers. The same exact thing. So let's say you want to build a development just like the Grove, but you want to do it in downtown St. Pete, which is something we're working on too. You could start with 5 containers. You don't need to start with your complete construction. Just make sure you have the property available, and we'll just do it in phases, right?
Interesting. Yeah, I guess you're right. If you look at this whole thing through the shipping container lens, you're going to miss the overall concept. You're going to miss the idea of this, right? Even taking out the front doors and all of the 3 walls, you're left with a super, super solid steel structure. And on each corner, they have that. Like, David, could you pull back up a picture of those shipping containers? There's that really thick, like that meaty kind of corner piece on the top and on the bottom.
Exactly.
If you took out all the sides, you're left with this like really beautiful, super, super strong shell. Like I'm imagining now the application, God, I mean, it's kind of endless, really. The applications probably.
And that's also a problem that we have is people come
Why is
to
it a
us
problem?
because it's endless. And I have heard every idea, use, can we do this? Can we? The answer is yes. It's just budget and time. Anything you can think of, we can do.
Yeah, look at that. 2 walls taken out. You put them both together. There's no interior. It doesn't need an interior support, right?
And we welded in. There's 2x6 HSX, which is a hollow structural steel that gets welded into the top to make that more robust. But we can span the entire length of a 40-foot container with the center gone, which to get a structure like that from the ground up, as somebody in development, that's like half the cost right there.
Well, one thing I'm thinking is the amount of labor it takes to get a structure out of the ground. Just take a single family home. The engineering and the carpentry and the trusses, and it's a feat. I mean, you're having deliveries at the site for weeks with all different sorts of building materials. This is all done on your site, correct? I mean, you have specialized labor that like basically it's what, a bunch of welders and some engineers. I mean, my point is you guys can operate in a very lean way. Like you don't need to have a drywall, this guy, that guy. I mean, towards the finishing side of it.
So we do have everybody, right? But the people that are employed full time are guys that are in the fabrication side,
right.
So metal fabrication, so welding and cutting out the sides of the containers and welding in structure. Anytime we take something out, we have to put something back in to maintain the structure of the container, like a building component. But in saying that, for example, when we build a house right now, right, we do as much as we can do on the job site, and that we're only limited by the inspector. We could complete these things and then just send them and connect them,
right.
But we can't because the inspector won't travel to our shop to inspect the process. So what we do is we do all the all the cutouts. We do the welding into the steel structure. We do steel studs, which we use exclusively. I don't use any wood. We have a couple of times, and we do it for customers that have a reason to do it. But generally, we don't. And we use 20 gauge or 18 gauge steel stud, which is also a structural steel stud. It's not like the thing you find at Home Depot that's like flimsy.
Right.
And then we do that. We can put the windows in. We can anchor the windows so they can see that. And we do rough-in plumbing and rough-in electrical. But we can't cover anything. So then it will get delivered to the job site, and then we'll send our drywall guys to drywall and cover everything up and then terminate whatever you need to in terms of plumbing and electric.
Very similar to traditional new construction.
Absolutely.
You know, you're not covering it up. The inspector comes in, then you move forward.
We tried to get around that by using private provider. Do you know what private providers are? So I don't know if it's new. It's been around for a bit. It's difficult to use though, because you got to find somebody that's willing to do it. Private provider is like they run your permitting process and inspection process. So it's like third party. If we could run a third party inspection process at our shop.
Well, I'm just imagining a time in the future where at the state level and the local level, they carve out a department within code enforcement that is focused on, let's just call it like a non-traditional building material task force, where they would come to your shop and allow you to operate in an even more efficient manner. I think not the only way, but probably the best way to get to your number, 60, 70, 80,000 for this ready to go product, is to have local government completely on board, to streamline that approval process, to make sure you're not having to put these structures in the context of a manufactured home or a traditional.
Well, and that's why I wish your grandfather was still the mayor, because this is the call out then. You know, this is the call out for anybody in that part of the city or people that want to see this kind of thing grow in this area. Please reach out to us, because we want to be a part of that conversation. And we don't want to be a part of that conversation because it's us. If more companies can come out and build these things here, it's better for everybody.
You have the Elon Musk mindset where he's like, patents are for the weak.
Yeah, you know? It really is. We're not trying to corner a market. This is not a market you can corner. How do you corner all construction in the United States? You don't. You know what I mean? You hope to just get the part that you're good at. And the part that we're good at seems to be this forward-thinking, robust shipping container construction, but it may not end here. And that was my point earlier. It could be a transitional product that gets us into this different type of thinking.
Well, I know you mentioned you talked to someone in a campaign, right, in St. Petersburg for city council. You've obviously dealt with people at the planning department and the permitting department and all that. Is there someone, not an elected official, is there someone either at the state or local level who's in the code enforcement department that's like, hey, I want to be a part of this. I want to help you take this and get it to a point where, like we're talking about, it's separated from your traditional building.
The only person that has said out loud that he really likes this and wanted to do it was Pete Boland.
Okay.
But other than that, I think it's more important to work with people at the state level, because we need to meet the state requirements for, like, you know, Miami-Dade notice of approvals and all that stuff for impact glass. And
good call, because you're going to run around with local government for years before it gets there. You absolutely.
Some places are completely against this. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
What's their argument to be against something like this?
To be honest, I haven't been on those calls, but it's kind of like a blanketed, we don't do that here. And for whatever reason, I'll give you an example of something that is required in St. Petersburg that you can push back on a little bit. And we have St. Petersburg, if it's in a certain area, requires the container or ADU, doesn't matter what the construction is, but it has to match the facade of the structure in the front, right? So if you have an old 1930s or 20s style house, if you build a container ADU in the back, it has to match that structure. So it's got to have the same type of roof. It's got the siding. It is possible. Our pushback to that, which was okayed a couple of times, was that you really don't want us to put all this stuff on this container that's going to fly off during a hurricane. The only thing that's going to be left is the container. And the customer wants that look. Sometimes if you're putting this behind, like, let's say a place in like, on like I guess that would
Like
be like
historic
Kenwood,
Northeast.
like
Yeah.
Kenwood's not all historic. It's
Right.
some just like 60s and 70s, brick houses, and they don't, why does the back need to look like that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously where it's correct to do. And we don't want that. The problem is it's in black and white. This is what it has to be. So this is what it's going to be. And so you have to know that, okay, well, let's try to push back a little bit and see where we can make that okay.
I wonder if there's consulting firms that have popped up. I'm sure there is on the West Coast and in Canada that are in between the local government or the state government and the manufacturing company to try to help local government understand some of these things.
I have reached out to a couple people. I actually met at an event that I went to with Brendan downtown. I can't remember what it was called at this point, but what was that thing we went to?
The Chambers meeting?
Yeah, we went to a Chambers meeting, right? And I met a woman there who owns this kind of like private provider thing. And I think that those people would have to be that consulting service.
Yeah.
Because they deal with the city so often.
Yeah.
But then they also deal with contractors and construction. And so they know, that thing too. But I mean, if I could pay for it, I would.
Well, again, it's a new thing, and you are a pioneer in a lot of ways, at least locally.
So let me address, where Toronto got it right.
Sure.
Okay. There instead of an ADU, they call it a laneway house. And the reason they call it a laneway house is because obviously Toronto's old, but it's dense. It's people are right on top of each other. And so they have those alleyways or laneways in the back. And because, property expenses and building and homes are just astronomical in Toronto. Like, it's a joke how expensive stuff is. They were allowing you to put an ADU or a laneway house in the back for your family, for more income. And a huge part of that was containers. And I think the reason it was containers is because you've got major container companies in Toronto. I mean, big container companies that I've worked with, that actually one of the projects we've got now came from that, like giant containers. There's a company, Store Stack, that we used to work with. And those guys were like, hey, for this process or for this use, containers are great, right? And so they got on top of it. We don't really have that kind of help here. Mm-mm. So anywhere we can get, like, that's why being on this podcast is so great for us, Garrett, because we are, rubbing shoulders with the who's who of the area that can help us.
Well, I think that the challenging aspects of affordability are only going to get more complicated. I mean, at least here in Florida and in Tampa Bay. I don't think construction prices, I think they'll level out and go down. There's obviously an ebb and a flow to all these different building materials. But in general, when you have so many people moving to Florida that are going to be continuing to come here over the next few decades, we're going to have to get creative. Like, we're going to have to get creative about different building solutions. This, to me, is an absolutely viable piece. Like we've talked about, it's not the entire answer, but it is absolutely a piece of a part of these solutions. So that's why I wanted to talk to you guys. I wanted to explore the ideas. I wanted to see where it fits in, and hopefully someone listening reaches out to you and says, hey, I'm in government at a building department. I don't care if it's in Tampa, it could be in Largo, Clearwater, it doesn't matter where it is, or even outside of the Tampa Bay area, and reaches out and tries to help you with this. Because in a way, locally, you are going at it alone, right? In Toronto, if you go up there and there's this entire infrastructure kind of, in a sense, built.
The cheapest
for
shipping
this.
containers you can buy brand new are in Toronto, outside of
because
China.
The market is just, there's this huge market for it.
Huge.
What about like West Coast, California, where they're more forward thinking?
I've been scratching my head about prices and buildings and all this stuff, and it's really weird in the United States right now. I think that you'll see them pop up in the desert. They like to put like container homes in the desert a lot. We have a project that I'm trying to do with an artist, a pretty famous artist, to do something in Joshua Tree, and that, I think that comes from more like the less utility, more like, we want to build something out of containers. Whereas in St. Pete right now,
there's the cool factor.
Yeah.
Right?
And they like the artsy side of it. But in St. Pete, a lot of people are reaching out to us because we're like the only thing that'll work for them. You know, like some of these ADUs, okay, firstly, people need to make more money right now, right? And so they see, well, if I can get like a HELOC or I can take some money out and I can build something in my backyard, that'll help me survive.
Yeah.
But then there's other people that are like, I need to consolidate my expenses, so my family needs to live together now. And that's what we're seeing. I'm not seeing so much stuff that's like, I really want to build a container house because I think they look cool. Right.
Wow. So locally, you're seeing it out of almost market demand, just necessity. Wow.
Yeah. And that's why I keep saying, if I can find the right people locally, I mean, locally is easier, but even the statewide that can help us figure this out, you know, those constituents want this, you know?
Is there, in your experience building outside of Florida, are there other places in the country that do have a separate building code for non-traditional materials? Like you mentioned, I think you work in Nevada and out west.
So nobody that I know of
In the States.
Nobody that I know of in the States has addressed this directly, container homes. Like they do talk about it in code and they do talk about it in permitting. And so it is something that you can do. But like what you're suggesting is a great suggestion. That would be awesome. It's almost like a diplomat for container homes. And if we can get that going, that would be very helpful.
I just see it as a viable solution. You know, that's how I see it. And
we're lucky in the way that this gets attention. Like you saw us, and if people see this and they think it's cool.
It's the first step to anything is exposure. You know, if people only hear shipping container home, they probably brush it off. But if they hear a deeper conversation about it, about the building materials, about the structure integrity, about the fact that this could be the last thing standing, you know, in our area, if we got hit by a major storm, it will be, right? I mean, it's like, you know, those are important factors that people should consider. I think the hiccup that I've found with local development, and this is not a Tampa thing or a St. Pete thing, this is just probably a human being thing, is people do fear the nature of a neighborhood will be changed by something like this, right? If on a particular corner there's a bunch of containers, people perceive that as not looking good. But here's the thing, you could absolutely make them look good. I saw some pictures. David, when you get a chance, can you pull up that picture of the one with the beautiful like wood front? Like my point is, you can take these things as far as A, the customer wants to, or B, the local government would require you to. Local government could require you to make these things architecturally significant if they face the outside street, and that solves for that fear that people might have.
I mean, the container home that we're building, it's on the Alafaya River, so it's in Riverview.
Yeah, like that.
That's a good example of it. That's not what it is completely, but imagine that wood structure right there, and then everything else is stucco.
Right.
So it's the container home we're building that's going to get a lot of press because of the TV show and all that stuff. That one is not going to look like a container at all. You won't be able to tell it's a container.
No, it doesn't look like it. It's beautiful wood on the front with the big sliding glass doors and windows. And the only way you could tell is because of the sides. But I bet you could continue the wood potentially all the way around
and cover it. And
even do a pitched roof, almost like a facade. You know, no different than this building has a small facade on it. That's just there for cosmetic purposes. You could do the same thing here.
Yeah, and you know, someone that did this and did it pretty well was Kawa Coffee in St. Pete. Are you familiar with Kawa Coffee?
I'm familiar with the company, but I didn't know they had a shipping container.
Yeah, so on 4th Street, they built a shipping container coffee shop that we didn't have anything to do with, but I did end up meeting with Rafael a couple of times from Kawa and talking about, you know, maybe using shipping containers as a way for them to multiply these things. Because you got to remember, we're in good company here. I mean, remember the manufacturing on US 19 of all the checkers. And like, think about the idea of checkers in the past. They manufactured those checkers on a production line, and then they sent them all over the place and just plugged them in and built a little bit of structure on the, you know, wherever the pad was or wherever their location was.
Checkers, what are you talking about?
So
the restaurant, the fast food place?
The fast food restaurant were pre-manufactured on US 19. This was a long time ago. long time ago.
They pre-manufactured how they have the little front, the two drive-throughs and
So
the front window?
the main structure of Checkers was a pre-manufactured product.
I had
It was
no
on
idea.
US 19. Now the company that's there is like a big metal company, or they manufacture chassis or something. I
And
don't know
when
what it
was
is.
this? When they were
in the 90s.
Okay, so this has been kind of
I remember
established.
driving by it and seeing Checkers wrapped up outside.
No shit. And they would what? Ship them around the
They would
country?
ship them and plug them in, and that was kind of their business model, was ease of expansion, and then their construction costs
It
were
makes sense because
controlled.
those Checkers, they're so small. They have the two lanes, the two front. There's no entrance.
No.
Well, employees only.
Yeah,
obviously,
employees
but
only, and then a restroom.
I had no idea those were pre-manufactured. That's
And
crazy.
they're pre-manufactured here.
So the vision for what St. Pete Box is, and your forward-facing company towards your customers. Remind me of the name one more time.
Lumara containers.
Lumara, right?
Yeah.
So the ultimate vision could be something similar, where in the same way Checkers has that facility, you guys expand your current operations to be able to send these out across the country, which is probably what you currently do, right?
Yeah, and ultimately what we want to do, there's the Kawa.
Look
and
at
it's
that,
great.
dude.
Yeah, and he used containers too, because he wanted to have that
That's
like
so cool,
more
man.
rustic look.
And look how people, I think it's important to understand too that it's not just the interiors of these things. Look at the way they've done little outdoor seating. You put the one on top with the logo, front door.
And look at the drive-through. I mean,
and a drive-through connected to it, man. Super.
so he's got
super
everything
cool.
in there. He's got a
And
little,
this cost him probably a fraction of what it would have cost to do a traditional drive-through fast food.
and it was probably the only thing he could build on this land. There was probably not a traditional construction style that he could have put there.
Because of the limitations of the size of the property or whatever that may
Exactly.
be. Very, very cool, man.
And we can put this, like, we have so many guys, and I apologize to the people that have reached out for these types of products. That's why I'm bringing more people on in terms of brand wise and stuff. But we get a lot of people that want to put like a food truck or something, but they don't want to use a food trailer. They want something more robust, something that if they have to move it, it's not going to fall apart, something they can brand a little bit better. Maybe they can make it a little bit bigger, so it's got some service options and a kitchen that's bigger than what would be in a trailer. We get a lot of that. And you could potentially put that anywhere without a permit or anything. If you're running, a generator and, you've got a water collection system, and then you've got it on wheels. Because if you got it on wheels.
Why aren't these at every park in the city of Tampa? Every park, like Sparkman Wharf is the perfect example. You have a little tiny area. How many different concepts are there? Right?
A lot.
You have Edison, the bar, and then they have the little restaurant. You have a few concepts by Proper House Group. Let's just say there's 6. Does that sound right? There's like 6 different concepts at Sparkman Wharf. Maybe
At least.
8. 6
Yeah,
or 8,
at
whatever,
least.
whatever it is. But imagine it like Julian B. Lane Park here in Tampa or Mirror Lake Park in St. Pete. There was like a little corner of the park with 4 of these little things. Food truck operators get to have their own little space to create concepts. Like, to me, this is a solution that we could add to some of our parks, where you wouldn't have to bring in a food truck. You could have a more established
Absolutely.
business.
And we want to do that, and we want to price it so that people can afford to take the risk with us. I will say this. So my brother, Frank DiCosola, DiCosola, right?
Yeah,
We joked about
right.
that. He's a lawyer in St. Pete, and he is a personal injury lawyer. He owns his firm. He's got his office and everything is there. And he's actually asked me, hey, could we build a couple of containers and put them on the roof or something so that I have some extra space for offices and this and that? And I said, potentially, yeah. I mean, if we do the engineering and we figure out what it is you want, what your needs are. So this is something that we can add potentially to anywhere.
Anything.
Yeah, anything.
I mean, when they were building Sparkman Wharf, I remember they had cranes in here, they're lifting them up. Why the hell couldn't you pop one of these on top of a building as some sort of accessory structure? Absolutely.
And we worked on the project in Canada, the container factory or container park or whatever it's called in downtown Toronto. We worked on that. And they actually used 48-foot containers. Like they use the giant containers that have the extensions on the end and stuff for whatever reason. I don't know why. But in saying that, it's completely built out of containers, whereas Sparkman's Wharf has a certain percentage of that build is a modular building structure that is pre-manufactured that kind of looks like containers.
It's so cool. It's kind of amazing how much they can fit into each one of these too. Like you would imagine, oh, a shipping container, what can you do in there in terms of food service? These guys have like full blown grills. Like these guys are cranking out amazing food from these small spaces.
So, when they I don't know, you would know what it's called. I can't think of it, but when they changed the zoning in downtown St. Pete to it's like, I don't know, a couple letters and numbers. I don't know what it is. But when they changed that, we got approached by a couple developers to say, hey, can we build containers where we've got storefront bottom and domicile or, living up top. And then we can throw 4 or 6 of these because they change it so it can be 4 income properties on one piece of property, correct?
Oh, I'm not really familiar with the
St. Pete deal. I don't know. But so in doing that, now you've got this small piece of property that has ingress and egress through an alleyway or something, and you normally couldn't have put anything there. But because you've got just this 8-foot wide container and we can go up a couple, 2 or 3 containers, now you've potentially got like 1, 2, 3, 4 times 2 times 3 in terms of being able to have income.
How do you get to the second, third, and fourth layer? Would there be an interior staircase?
Depends. There's interior. We've done interior staircases and we've done exterior. So
wow. So you could kind of run it however you wanted to do it. How does it work too? Have you done anything 3 or more stories?
Yes, but that would be in Toronto.
Okay. Because I would imagine if you do that here, they want you to put like fire sprinklers in there or...
Ooh, yeah, that's an interesting one.
I think they'd be stringent once you start to get some height to these things.
Yeah, I mean, we actually, the stuff in Toronto had fire, but we weren't a part of that process. A lot of times when I was doing these projects, even now, we would just do the steel work, which we'll do as much or as little as you want us to do. You know what I mean? We'll just sell you the containers, or we'll completely build them out. Man, I was just going to say something. Oh, you know what's a cool one? Can I talk about the dental stuff? So we were approached by a dentist who is pretty successful. He owns dental. What did he call those? I don't know. So he had some term for them, but he wants to build using containers, the expansion onto his dental practice so that he can have more rooms to be able to have patients. And so the process or the project that he's starting with is like, I want to say 4 or 6 containers. It's not a small project, but he was like, I think this is a really good way for dental practices to expand, in this compartmentalized way. Which is the modular that's the modular structures that we're talking about.
Well, now my wheels are spinning about like, why did I even buy this office, this big building? I could have put a shipping container in the parking lot of my other place, or even like here in the parking lot behind here. Like imagine if you did a shipping container back there. I could do the podcast studio back there and then open up more room for office in the building. I just think in general, the ideas will flow.
The thing that you would have wanted is we built podcast containers.
You have before?
Yeah, and I built a shipping container
probably
recording
so quiet,
studio.
Perfect audio quality.
Especially because you could float the walls and you can leaf the wall system and then you can get it up on some type of spring or pad so it's got nobody driving by is creating any noise.
You could go crazy with this thing.
It's awesome. And, you could use 2 of them, 3 of them or whatever and keep it up off the ground. But again, sky's the limit. Like we can build anything.
Anything is possible with this. What did Danny Duncan have you do?
Oh, so Danny Duncan.
And can we pull up whatever you built?
Yeah,
probably
I don't
on
have
his
any
YouTube.
really great pictures of it, though, man.
It's probably on his
sorry
YouTube.
I don't have those pictures.
Maybe just Google Danny Duncan
shipping container. So Danny reached out to us and was like, hey, I like what you guys are doing. Would you be able to build me an office? Because his building was damaged from the hurricane that hit down there. So he's in Inglewood, which is Sarasota County. And he was dealing with insurance and trying to get trades in there to fix stuff. And the insurance company wouldn't let him fix anything. So he had this giant, he's got a big, like 20 or 25,000 square foot warehouse. It's like his fantasy factory, if you will.
That's awesome.
And did I send it to you guys?
Potentially.
Oh yeah, some of it. Yeah, this one's just the lights and stuff. See, none of it's like super finished though.
See, I like the idea, and we'll jump back into the story, but like the idea, the speed in this is really fascinating to me.
That's the interior.
Like, hey, you know, basically Danny would have been out of business for however long, and you guys came with this amazing solution that probably happened way quicker than a traditional build.
Well, and that was funny because this one I was building for a model. So
another model.
I was building it for an office model, and then Danny was like, "I need something. I want it."
You're like, "Here we go again."
And it's really overbuilt. It's got leafed
Dude, it
pine.
looks so good.
That goes
it's
down
really
like
pretty.
Yeah.
LED lighting, and
so that LED lighting too is a waterfall LED lighting.
It doesn't look. The thing about this too, like we keep talking about how it's shipping container is the wrong term. It does not look like a shipping container at all. Like when you're on the inside. The wood ceiling, the woodwork, the LED lighting, the windows, like...
Yeah, not to like toot my own horn, but like I always try to make these so that they don't look like that.
Right.
Like I'll make the windows really, really long and go to the floor so they feel like a more commercial space. I like to use as much storefront glass as possible. And I get it from my buddies at Bay Glass and Window. And they helped me out with some of that stuff. Like I got that glass from them. And then I custom made those metal frames. And it just looks fantastic.
Dude,
it doesn't look like a container.
And what is Danny Duncan going to use this for?
He uses it as an office.
So that's
like a chill area,
an air conditioned little space that's connected to his main warehouse.
Yeah, and like I said, when he got it, he wasn't even allowed to fix his garage doors on his shop. So he didn't have a place that he could like put stuff and lock it. And the way this container closes is there's a man door right there at the end, but those two barn doors that are at the end of the container, they still function. So for all intents and purposes, you can lock this thing up and no one's getting in.
Damn. And that's it on the right. You're bringing it to him pre-manufactured with like the windows in it and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, everything was done on this. It literally just plugged in and turned on.
So you were like, well, I have one available.
Yeah, I wasn't anywhere near finished and it took me forever. I'm sorry, Danny. But yeah, he was really adamant about having this, and so we sold it to him. I could have used it as like an office for myself and then like a model.
Well, I'm thinking of so many other ideas. Like there's this in North Hyde Park, my wife and I went to this architectural salvage place. I wish I knew the name of it. It's super cool. This guy's just traveled the world and collected all these just interesting things and trinkets and light fixtures and what have you. And it's not air conditioned, right? It's like an old warehouse.
Okay.
Well, imagine if he could put something like that attached to that huge warehouse that was air conditioned. You have your little office in there. I see tons of commercial application.
What I really want to do, I talked about this on
farmers market applications in rural areas or whatever it may be.
I talked about this on James. I can't remember James's last name, but I think you know him.
Lascara. He was on the show.
Exactly. Okay. On James's show, I talked about a product that we wanted to make. And I mean, at this point, it's pie in the sky if I can have the time to do it. But we wanted to build a sauna and cold plunge box. And we wanted to build it so that people can add it as like a small gym owner or even a large gym that doesn't have that. They could add it and be able to offer that to their customers.
Exactly.
At the same time, people that have like a larger house with a pool outside, they could just slap it next to their pool. And now they have that sauna and cold plunge that you just plug in, right?
Totally.
And that was selfishly something I wanted because I had been trying to find a gym that was really close to my shop that had a real sauna, not like a, what do they call, infrared sauna or something, and nobody had it. And I was like, man, if these guys could either rent it from us or buy it from us cheaply, like try to get them for like $20,000 or $22,000, something that they can add pretty easily, maybe they would be able to open their market up a little bit.
I think what's interesting too is like a big box gym, like the EOS on Dale Mabry. That's where I used to go. they have so much parking lot space that's not used.
Exactly.
You could pop a men's and a woman's like cold plunge sauna
Yeah.
in the parking lot. Take up what, like 4 spaces?
Yeah, if that. That was kind of our idea. Hey, man, if you ever think of anything, you got to let us.
I'll give you a call.
Yeah, you got to let us work with you because we will do it for the process. You know what I mean?
Tell people how they can get in touch with you.
So the website is a good way. It's got our email and our phone number on there. Ethan Marsh is a local real estate agent that I work with too, and he's really great about talking to people. My phone number, I mean,
is that you right there on the top left?
It goes right to my phone.
Okay, 727-434-2471.
Yeah. Our Instagram is at St. Pete Box. And then our email address is always our first name and then at St. Pete Box. And then Lumara. And Lumara is a great way because Zach and Rafi, who run Lumara, which is, for all intents and purposes, it's a part of St. Pete Box. We are now kind of joined at the hip. And that's a great way if you're looking for something residential.
Look how pretty that thing is. Accordion doors. And you know, in my head, I'm thinking of like I'm thinking of the container being linear, right? Where the front door is the actual front. And then you have this long shotgun style, right?
Okay.
Like we have here in Ybor. To turn it and have the front as the wide portion of the container with all these windows. And then you have a staircase going up on the right-hand side with a huge deck on the entire thing. Dude, for like a pool house,
Oh,
like
yeah.
a little casita.
I want to do one. I want to do a casita or a pool house.
A perfect application.
Especially because I've developed a way now to add decks after the fact. So if someone buys one from us and they're like, I don't really want a deck yet, we can add them a deck because I'm using the corners with the holes in them. They're called corner castings. And that's how they lift and move containers. So they make something called the twist lock that goes in there. So I flip the twist lock upside down. I make the deck, and then you just put it on top and lock it into place. So someone calls
you in 2 years, yeah, we want to add the deck in. You can do that.
Just pre-manufacture a deck and fly it out to them.
So if you're just listening, Lumara, LUMARA.com, and you'll see render. You guys have, it sounds like there's a little bit of pricing on here, ways to get connected. There's some specs, square footage, all that sort of stuff. If you guys want to find out more. I also see free zoning and permit check. So you guys will go in, work with the local municipality and kind of figure out if it's a yes or a no.
And have the experience.
You always like to say yes, but sometimes local regulations get in the way of that.
Well, it might be a yes. I mean, it might be a no up front, but we'll get a yes, you know, especially if it's a project that's like really, really cool and, you know, it would be great for that area so that we can do more stuff there. Then we'll fight even harder for it. I also wanted to mention OasisEngineering.net. They did a lot of our drawings and engineering, and they specialize in shipping containers. They have a whole section just for shipping containers, and they're in Tampa.
Very cool.
And then the other guy is Stephen Bender, and he teaches at University of Florida, and he is specialized in shipping containers, and we're going to be doing some stuff with him too.
Is that a shipping container?
I don't think that one is, but if you go
but you could absolutely recreate
I could make that out of shipping container. Yeah, that could be
and keep it open.
A high cube.
And keep it open, right?
Yeah.
Like an outdoor kitchen concept.
Absolutely.
Seating.
We're also trying to do a project. I don't know if it's gonna work. I mean, obviously it's all dependent on the customer, but we're trying to do something right now down on Central and like 29th. Bill Hillman owns a property down there, and it's a really, really small building. So using containers to add a kitchen, to add, what else is he adding? Yeah, a bar, maybe some apartment space on the other side of the property. Like, sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit. This has been an awesome conversation. Super fascinating. That's what I was thinking about earlier.
Yeah.
Where you have, you know, it's up on stilts, which is essentially like flood zone new construction here in Florida.
Yeah.
This is what you have to do. You can do absolutely the exact same thing with these shipping containers. Now, are these concrete piles, or how does the bottom structure work?
So I would prefer steel because I'm a welder.
Right.
But they can be like sauna tubes, or they can be piles. They can be screw piles. They can be anything really. That's how I would build my house if I was gonna.
Me too, man.
Build a container home, which like I am. I just got to figure it out.
It's like a little fortress, really.
Absolutely.
Freak, man. And then you can have like parking underneath. You could probably close off some for storage. Do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, I'd really like to do one on the beach to showcase, because if you do, like I said, if we do get a storm in, it's going to be the only thing left. A big one.
It's probably, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's probably the best marketing you could ever have is like absolute destruction. And
Yeah,
then
it's kind of
shipping container
grim.
just sitting in the middle of all the debris.
It's kind of grim, but I mean,
It
if
is,
you
but-
see tornadoes that happen, and see, like, if you look at all
Right.
this, or the fires, look at the
Right.
fires that happen in Hawaii. There's a video where they're driving by and everything's burnt down, and then there's like a lot of shipping containers, and they're all there.
Yeah, they're all there.
You know, unfortunately.
But it shows you the strength of these this material.
And
Amazing.
maybe, you know, maybe it was good that we didn't have that much stuff to show, because then it'll give us a reason to come back on and show you the things that we talked about completing that will be completed.
I'm looking forward for an update on a couple sides. Like I'm very interested in to see the creative aspect of this and what people will come up with, because just sitting here, I've come up with my own ideas. I've seen new ideas, but as this gets more popular, and I believe it will, you're going to have people come up with concepts that like you didn't even think of.
Oh, absolutely.
And it'll completely change the course of this entire business.
Yeah.
And
And we're hopeful for that.
and I think that'll happen. And then the other side of it, I would love to have an update on how the local governments in this area and at the state level see this, you know. And
I think you're going to be helping us with that.
well, I hope so.
You get to talk to all of them, so
Well, you got to come back on.
I want to.
Nick, you the man. Thank
Thanks.
you. This
Thanks
was
for
really,
having me.
really cool.
Thank you.
All right. What is it? Lumara, Lumara, stpetebox.com. And you guys on Instagram, you said it before. Say it one more time.
At St. Pete Box.
At St. Pete Box. St. Pete Box for everything, basically.
Yeah. Easy to remember.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, bye everybody. See you next week. Hey guys, if you want to watch episodes just like this one, make sure to click right here to view the rest of our full episodes. And also make sure to subscribe by clicking right here. Thank you for watching.